When I think about caring for one another and being good neighbors and being a servant for one another too, I automatically thought of one of my own neighbors across the street. He has been a gracious neighbor along with his wife Deb. And I thought, I'm going to interview this fellow and see what he has to say about why he does what he does, because he is such a servant to the community and to the neighborhood. Let's see what he has to say. I'd like to introduce to you all Vern Wilmot, my great neighbor, and his wife Deb, who's in the other room. It is a pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you, Vern. I remember when I came here, my family and we were rebuilding the deck, and out of the blue, somewhere along the way, you said, I'll help you with the deck. And that meant even pulling out nails from zillions of boards.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yes. And I've always appreciated that sense of servanthood that you carry with you. What is it that draws that out for you?
I guess just, I know myself working on a project, quite often if there's another pair of hands around, it gets done easier and I'm less likely to not quit too soon.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and I think my parents sort of helped instill it in me that, you know, if you got time and somebody needs some help, give them a hand.
Yeah,
you know?
you do that.
Yeah, and it's a good feeling to do that. And sometimes I feel like I should offer I have offered my services sort of to pretty much anybody that, you know, knows me. So if you need help with something, if I'm available, I'll be glad to give you a hand.
You do that well. You
Thanks.
do that well, yeah. When the tornado ripped through our neighborhood and a big tree fell in our yard, you were right over there chopping up that tree and finding someone to take the wood away.
Well, and I had to convince you that you and I could handle taking it down, remember?
Yes, I
It's
remember
like,
that.
you think we can, I don't think we can do that. And I said, of course we can do it. No?
I remember that. Being in a neighborhood and being good neighbors matters more and more these days. And I'm wondering, not only how do you, I think you've answered some about how you care for neighbors, but how do you feel cared for?
I guess knowing that I could probably ask most anybody if I really needed some help with something, and if they were able to, they would lend a hand. Or as we've seen with, for instance, you and your lovely wife and your son and daughter, when we've gone on trips and that, you guys are always just said, well, we'll be glad to stop over and, you know, check in on the cat, make sure she has food. And
I have one other question for you, Vern. I'm wondering if you'd tell me a little bit about your thoughts. Servanthood is not a duty, but a natural outflow of caring for people who care for you. Any thoughts about that statement?
I think it's absolutely true, because if you feel like it's a requirement, then you're not doing it for the same reason, and you don't get the same good feeling in your heart, in your mind about what you just did.
Right, right.
You know, part of it, for instance, with our Lions Club, you know, I'm a big part of the wheelchair ramp crew.
Yeah.
And it's just such a good feeling when you see somebody. For instance, one time we had a guy who had not been able to get out of his house for 6 months.
Oh, man.
And it wasn't a big deal for us to build him a ramp. I mean, you know, it's just what we do. We have the time, and so we do it. And to think that that's all it took, just so this man could get out of his house.
Yeah.
It's like, boy, I can do that.
Yeah,
You know, that doesn't take that much on my part.
Yeah.
So it's like, and to do so much that it did on his part. Yeah, and I think that's the big deal. It makes a difference in somebody's life, and you know, and maybe someday. And there have been times when the shoe's been on the other foot. You know, when like this most recent storm. when our big willow tree went down. Fortunately, I called 5 of the guys that helped build ramps with me, and they came over and we got it cut up and removed. And I would never been able to do it by myself.
It was a big tree.
Yes, it was a big tree.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, paying it forward, what comes, goes around, comes around, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
You know.
Thanks so much, Vern.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, appreciate this time. And
Sure.
thanks for being a great neighbor.
Well, thank you for being a great neighbor.
Ditto. Well, good day to you. It's a cold one in the Fox Cities. A little blustery. The sun might try to peek out today. I wanted to introduce you to my neighborhood. Across the street is the home of Vern and Deb Wilmot. And over here, right down here, is where I sometimes sit to watch the neighbors go by, to wave, to talk about what's going on in their lives and so forth. But my preferred place of sitting is in the backyard. I'll take you back there. Here is our backyard. My wife Barb and I enjoy sitting out here quite a bit. And it is a preferred place for me simply because I am an introvert. I don't know if that's odd compared to other pastors, but I enjoy time just to recharge. I need quiet time and alone time sometimes to kind of just think things through and get energy and enjoy God's creation and God's world. It doesn't mean I don't love my neighbors any less, but this is oftentimes the place I go to hang out, especially during the summer and early fall. When I'm talking about neighbors, I'm not only thinking about the persons next door or across the street. We have some good ones around here, but I'm also thinking about the persons that are ones that we meet in our day-to-day activities. Our community of caring may involve a waitress that regularly serves us, or a person that sits across the pew from us at church. It could be somebody at work. Let me tell you a story about a couple named Mary and Harold Brinig. Mary and Harold, they moved to Chicago many years ago, and they had no friends in Chicago, and soon they were lonely. And they were also irritable and unhappy with each other. And they were seeking help from the Bible one day, and they came across these words from Jesus that went, "Whoever wishes to become great among you must become a servant. For the Son of Man came to serve, not to be served." Powerful words. I know it's part of our small group series lesson this time around, but somehow that passage became like light shining in their darkness. And they realized that maybe a part of their unhappiness was their self-centeredness. And they wondered if Jesus was calling them to some unknown kind of service, but they didn't quite know what that would be there in Chicago. The first person they encountered as they had this new mindset was a waitress who served them breakfast in the nearby restaurant. She apologized that day for giving them slow service, and they said that that was okay. She said she was new in the city and feeling quite miserable. She invited they, Harold and Mary, invited this waitress to their home, their apartment, after she got off work. She came. Another was a neighbor who became good friends with them. It was a widower and someone who had lost his wife a while back. And that was the second person they befriended. And then before they knew it, a dozen people were coming to their home for fellowship, for prayer, conversation, and just some really nice times together. It was a community of caring that God had called them to. Out of these meetings, out of this small group, there grew a project called Adventures in Friendship. Soon, scores of people were involved in visiting the lonely and the shut-in folks who lived in that neighborhood, in the community. It was, as we might say, their own neighbor network, which is what we're hoping to do in the near future too. It was an interesting byproduct of what had started with their move to Chicago, their experience of loneliness, and inviting some people over to create a community of caring. Probably one of the most meaningful things to Harold and Mary was the fact that they completely immersed themselves in this effort and in their group and in their outreach and service, that they forgot their own troubles. Their lives had become immeasurably richer and filled with joy. It is what comes, I think, when we serve as Christ has served us.